When it comes to gaming, many gamers want their game performance to be the best. So instead of just playing a game, they want their whole gameplay session to be a full experience. Many PC gamers ensure the best experience by buying the best hardware possible. To make sure they are getting the best performance out of their hardware, they install monitoring software to see how well their PC hardware performs under high and in-game pressure. Unfortunately, the hardware needed for this kind of experience is very expensive and generally needs updating over time. Luckily, GeForce Now supplies the hardware to play these games at a high-end performance level, so you don't have to shell out thousands of dollars every time you need to upgrade your PC. GeForce Now also has its own PC monitoring system to check how well your cloud PC is running. This way, you can ensure that you are running the most optimized gameplay through the cloud.
No, don't!
A good way to determine whether a game is running great is to monitor the FPS, or frames per second, while playing. This frame number usually lies somewhere between 0 and 100. 30 FPS is average. 60 FPS is good and the standard for great gameplay. Anything higher than 60 is considered optimal. Many PC gamers use FPS monitoring software like Fraps, or the GeForce Experience for NVIDIA graphics cards, or Radeon Pro for AMD graphics cards. To activate the GeForce Now in-game performance monitoring system on the PC, hit the keys Ctrl Alt F6. The streaming stats window will appear in the top left-hand corner. These lines display a number of different stats that we'll go over line by line. The first stat you'll see is the FPS number. This is probably the most important stat you'll find. You can see here I'm running about 60 frames per second. This is the standard you want to have. The next stat is FT. It is the average frame-to-frame receive time from the server in milliseconds. The next stat would be FJ, or J, which is the average frame-to-frame receive time jitter. Negative time would be early, and positive would be late time. R is your average stream rate in megabytes per second. BWU is bandwidth utilization as a percentage. Let's go to the next line. That huge number that keeps increasing is your frame number. It'll keep increasing as you play the game. RTD is the round-trip delay from client to server in milliseconds. PL is the packet loss. The CPU percentage is how much of the CPU you are using on the cloud computer you are playing on. Let's move to the third line. B is the begin time of the latency of the packet from start of processing. D is the decode time, which is the latency from begin to completion of the decode process. R is the render time, which is the latency from decode depletion to render completion. P is the present time, which is the latency from render completion to post-swap buffers. And the last one on this line is T, the total time, which is the sum of all the video decode latency through the client from the third line. Lowest is best here. Also note that every one of these attributes on the third line is in milliseconds. Now moving on to the fourth line. The fourth line is probably the most important row you have in this stat lineup. WR is the window resolution. You'll notice here that it's 1280 by 720, so it's 720p. Now SR is your streaming resolution. This is the actual resolution GeForce Now is streaming at to you. Note this may vary due to network quality. This is the one to keep your eye on if your connection and quality dips throughout your gameplay. If there's one number to pay attention to, it's SQ. SQ is your quality score, which represents the overall streaming quality that you are currently experiencing. 100 is perfect, and 0 is basically unplayable. E is the number of input events processed. Now on to the fifth line. The GPU is the type of graphics card your cloud computer is running your session on. You can see we are running the GeForce RTX 2080, which is one of the latest graphics cards available today. As time goes on, you will be able to see the upgrades that GeForce Now will have applied to their service as gaming technology improves. Now, the input attribute determines whether you are using a direct input event from the system or you're using an SDL to input events from an SDL library. Now for the sixth and final line. The codec is the type of video compression code used to encode the video streaming your game. Codec H.264 is a very common codec in the industry. Even this video was made using codec H.264 as well. The renderer is an API used by GPUs to build 3D graphics. DX11 is short for DirectX 11, which is one of the latest versions of DirectX. So out of all these stats, the only ones that you really need to monitor for overall gaming performance is your FPS, the SR, your streaming resolution, and the SQ, which is the quality score. These three will give you the quickest way to determine how your cloud machine is running your game. Now let's go into a live demonstration on how these stats change on a bad connection.
Nice.
It's just bad quality, that's all.
Okay. That's it.
If you're in a situation where you have a slow internet connection, or many people are using the local network bandwidth, or the service is being overloaded, you may have a warning icon of a spotty internet connection appear. This icon will disappear as the connection gets better, but will reappear or continue to show if the connection gets worse or stays the same. Let's watch the monitoring panel to see the fluctuating stats while there's a spotty internet connection. The video quality faded, so watch the streaming resolution and the quality score dip lower as the quality fades. Notice the FPS still hovers around 60. GeForce Now prioritizes the FPS, so the gameplay will play as smooth as possible, even with a spotty internet connection. The panel does block part of your game UI, so keep account of that when playing. If you have had enough of viewing the monitoring system, just hit Ctrl Alt F6 to remove it. This sums up the tutorial on how to use GeForce Now's in-game video performance stats. Feel free to try out the monitoring system in-game. The gameplay here was from a free account. If you have a free account, try upgrading your account for a month to note the differences between the quality of each account type. We'll be covering the performance between the free account and the paid Founders account in an upcoming video. For the latest news, gameplay, and comparisons on cloud gaming, subscribe, and stay tuned right here at the only place where you can do battle in gaming heaven, Cloud Gaming Battle.